This salesboy is minding his business playing games when a group of thugs storm into his store and start ransacking the place. He gets confused and calmly tells one of them to pay, but he suddenly gets punched before he could complete his words. Then, the men point a dagger at him and order him to open the money register. He obediently opens the register, but the men begin to complain that the money is little, so the boy explains that most customers pay with cards. As one of the men packs the money into a bag, another man instructs the boy to open up the money safe that is behind. But the boy tells them in a shaky voice that he only works part-time, so he doesn't know the passcode to the safe. Suddenly, a hand reaches out and places a pancake box on the counter. It's a frail-looking customer. Her name is Okju, and she tells the salesboy that she wants to pay for pancakes. So she brings out a wad of cash and removes some notes to pay. The thugs are shocked at her audacity, but she nonchalantly pays and asks the salesboy for change. Since the boy still hasn't recovered from the thug's slap, she decides to get the change herself by removing it from the money that the thugs were stealing. This angers them, so one of the thugs puts a dagger on her neck to threaten her, but she grabs him and hits his head on the counter. Another thug tries to stab her again, but she uses a canned container to stop the impact of the dagger. She begins to fight all the thugs and ends up beating all of them. The store becomes a mess from the fight, but she calmly walks to the counter and volunteers to pay for the damaged can. That night, a group of ballet dancers danced beautifully in front of an audience. It's Ballerina's turn to come on stage, but she seems tense. She eventually joins the others on stage and also dances beautifully, but she still seems tense. As the group continues to dance on stage, someone suddenly hits her from behind, causing her to fall and sprain her ankle. Meanwhile, Okju is sitting alone with a pancake in front of her. She patiently waits for someone, but after a while, she decides to start eating. Later that night, while sleeping, her phone rings, so she wakes up to pick it. The caller is Ballerina, so Okju stands up to turn off the fan in order to hear the girl better. Ballerina apologizes for not always calling and tells Okju that a lot has been going on in her life. She also reveals that she had a performance, so she couldn't make it to dinner. With a shaky voice, Ballerina begs Okju to come over to her place, so Okju leaves her house in the middle of the night to visit her using a motorbike. On her way, she stops by a store to buy some lemonades and alcohol. The seller is shocked to see her and asks if she has resumed work, but she tells him that she hasn't been working lately. He also comments on her weight loss and gives her a free Turkish sausage before she leaves. She arrives at Ballerina's house and rings the doorbell, but there is no response, so she shouts for her friend to open up the door. However, there is still no response, so she decides to enter the door code. She opens the door and gets into the house. A song is playing in the house, so she enters her friend's room to turn off the player. No one is inside the room, but she finds a gift box on the bed. When she opens the box, she sees a ballet shoe inside and a paper-shaped boat. She unwraps the paper and sees some words written on it. It says, "Please get revenge for me." There's also an Instagram username written underneath. Okju becomes worried and begins to look around the house for her friend. She dials her friend's number but hears the sound of the ringtone coming from the toilet. When she enters the toilet, she is shocked to see the dismembered body of her friend in the toilet sink. Surprisingly, she doesn't cry. Okju had met Ballerina in a cake shop. Ballerina was about to close the shop, but when she saw Okju, she decides to keep the shop open. After choosing a cake, Ballerina volunteers to wrap it in a beautiful way. She asks who the cake is for, so Okju reveals that she had bought the cake for herself. When Ballerina hears this, she suddenly recognizes Okju and happily reveals that they were classmates in 8th grade. They go out for drinks to chat up on old times. While discussing, Okju reveals that she works as an escort and security agent for overseas companies and that her job is to protect VIP people. Ballerina then reveals that she works as a ballet dancer. Now, in the present, Okju looks at the wrap paper that contains the username of a person. Then, she searches for the username on the internet and sees tons of search results about food. All the food posts are made by the person with the username. So she clicks to look at the profile. On the profile, it says customers can only place an order via DM. So Okju sends a DM to place a food order. The person responds that they sell sushi and only accepts Bitcoin payment. So she orders a box of sushi. The person asks how many soy sauce packets she needs. So after hesitating for a while, she responds that she only needs 1 packet. After waiting for a response, the person suddenly leaves the conversation. She decides to take a break by drinking water, but then she sees a picture of herself together with Ballerina. This makes her remember the time she took the pictures with Ballerina. She also reminisces about their happy days together and how they would go for a swim at the beach and a date at the aquarium. They would also bet together and celebrate each other's birthday with a cake. Once, while lying down together, she had told Ballerina how her presence had made her begin to have fun. According to her, she always felt suffocated, but Ballerina became a ray of sunshine to her. A phone call interrupts her thoughts, so she goes to pick it up. It's an unknown number calling from Ballerina's phone, so after hesitating for a while, she picks it up. The caller is a male's voice. He thinks it was Ballerina who picked the call, so he begins to throw insults and even accuses her of spending more time with her friend rather than him. He yells and says her friend would stop hanging out with her once they know her true character. Then he tells her to meet him at a bridge the next day because his shop opens at 2 a.m. He also threatens to make her friends and family hate her if she doesn't go to meet him. Okjo stays silent until the mysterious man ends the call. The next day, a black Lamborghini drives and stops at the bridge. The driver steps down and begins to hand out a package to some people waiting by the bridge. Okjo watches this from afar and sees one of the people taking out something from the package. They remove a wrapped item from the sushi package and then dump the sushi into a waste bin. She continues sitting and watching the driver of the black car. Suddenly, her friend's phone rings, and it turns out to be the strange man calling her. After waiting for a while, the call disconnects. So he puts back the phone in his pocket and drives away. Okjo begins to chase after the car with her motorbike. The man smokes while driving, so he doesn't notice her tailing after him. He drives past a dark tunnel and gets to a large gate that opens for him. Once he enters, the gate immediately closes, so Okjo is unable to get in. She parks her motorbike in front of the gates and walks around to inspect the area. Then, she sees a building in the dark woods but decides to walk away. That morning, the strange man does his workout routine. His name is Choi. After the workout, he drives out of the gate in his Lamborghini and speeds off, which causes wind to blow off an old woman's goods. She begins to curse him, but Okjo, who is sitting nearby, just silently observes the whole thing while smoking. Then she gets on her bike in order to drive back to the strange man's house. She uses some tools to unlock his door and gets in. Then she installs a listening device in a hidden area. She also walks around the house and sees a wardrobe, so she looks for a hidden mechanism to open it. As soon as she opens the wardrobe, she sees tons of beautiful and colorful masks, whips, and handcuffs. She pulls open a drawer and sees many flash drives with names of women on it. She picks up the one with Ballerina's name and inserts it on her phone. It turns out that the flash drive contains an explicit video of Ballerina that was taken while she was unconscious. There's a flashback to when Ballerina was ballet dancing. She had seen the strange man in the crowd and got scared, which led to the ankle sprain. She looks back at the crowd but could no longer find the man. Back in the present, Okjo is having a mental breakdown after finding out about the flash drives, so she screams angrily by the lakeside. Meanwhile, Choi cleans his car at a car wash before going home. At home, he puts on a vinyl player and sits down to browse through his phone. Unknown to him, Okjo is listening to all his movements through the listening device. Then he makes a phone call to someone and plans to meet up with the person in a nightclub. Okjo notes down their conversation and the location that they plan to meet up. While on the phone, the man plans with his friend to meet up with some girls, and he comments that he loves mean girls more than easygoing girls. After the phone call ends, she removes her headphone and reviews all the details that she had gotten from the phone call. Later that night, Okjo visits Ballerina's house again and goes through the girl's wardrobe. She sees a beautiful ballet gown and gets filled with anger. So the next day, she visits the club and steals glances at Choi from afar. The bartender gives her a milkshake, so she gets distracted while taking a sip. When she turns around again to glance at the man, he's nowhere to be found. So she runs up the stairs to find him. As she searches around for him, he suddenly taps her from behind and begins to talk about how he hasn't met her for a long time. She asks if he knows her, so he calls a random name, but she tells him that it isn't her name. He apologizes for mistaking her for someone else. As he turns to leave, she stops him and volunteers to buy a drink for him. So next, he gives her a drive in his Lamborghini. When she asks if he's driving her to his house, he laughs at her for being naive and claims that he lives with his parents. So he proposes that they go together to a hotel that seems like a private club. She asks what's so special about the hotel, so he tells her to look forward to seeing the hotel. He drives her into a dark wood and they arrive at a building. While inside, he rings a bell and waits for the receptionist to respond. After a while, a receptionist comes out, so the man books the room at the end of the hall. As this is happening, Okjo notices someone by the corner with an anklet monitor. After stepping out of the elevator, the man makes Okjo walk in front of him, and he directs her on the path to take. They get inside a room and he locks the door. While inside, he talks about how beautiful the room is and even opens up the curtain to peek outside. He also secretly monitors Okjo's reaction from the mirror on the window. Then he turns around and asks if she wants a drink. But instead of getting a drink, he goes to the toilet and throws an empty drug container into the bloodied water closet. Then he zips open a bag containing dildos, neck chain, and other pleasure toys. He wears a face mask and then goes to meet an unconscious Okjo. It turns out he had put drugs in her drink to make her unconscious. He climbs on her and turns on a camera to video her. As he undresses her, she slowly takes out a dagger to stab him, but unfortunately, he grabs the dagger with his hands. They begin to fight, and as she tries to stab him again, he pushes her, making a wardrobe fall on her. She quickly stands up and goes for another fight, but he uses a wine bottle to hit her. She starts bleeding on the head but doesn't give up. They begin to fight again, and this time around, he hits her tons of times. However, she retaliates and holds his neck from behind. As she tries to stab him again, he pulls her by the head, making her fall. He even grabs a lampstand to hit her, but she evades it. Once the lamp is broken, the room gets dark, but they continue to fight. She manages to give him a cut in his stomach and even stabs his hand. He gets weak, so she pushes him down and stabs into his cheekbone. As she tries to stab him again, the room opens and the receptionist walks in and begins to shoot at her. She dodges the bullet by running under a bed, but the man climbs on the bed and shoots several times. However, he finishes the bullet on his gun, so she pulls the mattress to make him fall. She uses this opportunity to run out of the room while holding her hand that was shut. She closes the door and uses a fridge to wedge the door, but in the hallway, she sees the person with the ankle monitor holding an electric chainsaw. As he runs to her with the chainsaw, a door suddenly opens, making him hurt himself with the saw. The person who opened the door is a young girl in a school uniform. The young girl grabs Okjo's hand and leads her to escape. When they get downstairs, the girl removes the Lamborghini key from the counter and they drive out of the area in the Lamborghini. Meanwhile, Choi undergoes a surgery to stitch his cheeks. When he wakes up, a group of thugs are standing around his hospital bed. One of the thugs forcefully put him in a sitting position, so the leader of thugs approaches him and is in disbelief that he owns a Lamborghini. The leader takes a seat and asks for the cost of the Lamborghini. He also questions Choi how he got the money, so Choi responds that he got it from part-time jobs. The leader scoffs at his response and begins to scold him for not following the gang's code of conduct. He stands up to sit with Choi and criticizes him for not properly managing his job. The man continues to criticize Choi for setting a bad example to the young recruited thugs, so Choi has no choice but to apologize. He promises to take care of the situation as fast as possible, but the leader isn't satisfied with response, so he grabs his injured cheeks and presses it forcefully. Afterwards, he takes a seat and instructs Choi to capture Okjo within 3 days. Meanwhile, Okjo is in a restaurant with a young girl who saved her. The girl refuses to talk to her, so she calls a waiter to place an order for a burger. But surprisingly, the young girl also calls a waiter to modify the food order. When the waiter leaves, Okjo begins to ask the girl how long she had been held captive in the hostel. So the young girl reveals that victims were held captive by Choi and were forced to make pleasure tapes. If anyone refuses, they will threaten to expose the explicit videos to the whole world. The young girl also claims that there are tons of other girls that are held captive by Choi and his gang, so she begs Okjo to help her get revenge. Meanwhile, Choi is now out of the hospital and the first thing he does is to visit a pharmacy and commands a receptionist to open a door. It turns out that the pharmacy has a secret room with tons of illegal drugs. The pharmacist inside the room is surprised to see Choi and wonders what is so urgent for Choi to make a visit. He also comments on Choi's face and laughs wickedly. After preparing and packaging some drugs for Choi, the pharmacist advises him to hire some thugs to find and deal with Okjo. But Choi turns down the advice and says the situation isn't too serious to go that far. Instead, he begs the pharmacist to join him in finding Okjo, but the man hesitates. So Choi offers to pay him 100 million if he helps in finding the girl. The pharmacist suggests that they film the process of killing Okjo when they find her, but Choi only has the intention of killing her for injuring his face, stealing his Lamborghini, and ruining his plans. Meanwhile, a woman is training a group of foreigners in a deserted area. After the training, she sits down for a meeting with Okjo, who had come to visit. The woman begs Okjo to return to her Secret Service agent job, but Okjo turns down the offer and reveals that she had visited in order to get weapons that can't be traced back to her. She tells the woman that she needs to get revenge for her best friend, but the woman tries to convince her to report the case to the police. However, Okjo insists on personally carrying out the revenge, so the woman connects her to an old couple selling weapons. She offers them a package of money, so they open up a truck and show her a drawer of guns. None of the guns in the drawer interest her, so she asks the man to give her something more decent. The old man tries to convince her to buy a shotgun that could make her shoot people unaware, but she isn't interested. So the old woman decides to show her a gas tank gun that can cause an explosion. That same night, the pharmacist calls his police friend and begs for help in finding a Lamborghini. Meanwhile, Okjo spends her time cleaning up the weapons she had bought. The young girl advises her to immediately carry out the revenge in order to prevent Choi from getting to them first. But Okjo thinks it's a bad idea to rush the revenge because Choi would be prepared for her. So the girl begs Okjo to teach her how to shoot a gun. But Okjo tells her to go to bed instead. Now the girl is asleep, Okjo goes outside to smoke. Then she decides to buy some snacks for the young girl. But when she returns home, she finds out that the girl is missing. As she enters a room to search for the girl, someone suddenly pushes her to the wall. The person is Choi. He punches and beats her several times, but she manages to escape through the window. The next day, Choi visits his leader at a horse stable and lies that he had killed and buried Okjo's body in the mountains. But the leader criticizes him for killing the girl and says he should have brought her alive to him. The man also tells him to stop operating independently and to hand over the business of filming women to another subordinate. But Choi insists on operating his own business, so the man tells him to leave. As he's about to leave, the leader stops and asks him about the young girl that was captured. The leader wants him to kill her, but he firmly insists on giving her a punishment other than death. When the leader hears this, he laughs and leaves. That night, Choi drags a seat to watch as his men torture the young girl. He tells her that he feels disappointed by her betrayal and also asks for the whereabouts of Okjo. But the young girl refuses to reveal any information, so Choi stands up and picks up a torture weapon. Then he walks up to her and begins to torture her. Later that night, as the hotel receptionist makes a call about selling explicit videos, he hears a doorbell, so he nudges the man with an ankle monitor for him to respond to the doorbell. But the man is fast asleep, so he stands up to personally respond to the doorbell. It turns out that the anklet man had amputated his legs due to the injuries from the chainsaw. He wakes up and checks a CCTV monitor in order to see who was ringing the doorbell. But surprisingly, he sees his friend's bleeding body next to the counter. Seeing this, he immediately unplugs his ankle monitor and picks up a hammer to fight. But as he's about to walk out of the door, a gun points to his face. Okjo asks about the whereabouts of Choi, and when he tells her, she ends up shooting him in the head. After killing the man, she remembers how her best friend had given her a limited edition sneaker. The friend wanted to travel to Russia, so the shoes were a gift before she traveled. Now in the present, she wears the sneakers and prepares to go kill Choi. She sneaks into the horse stable and enters a room where she sees a bloodied white shirt that belonged to the young girl. Then she enters an elevator filled with thugs who are confused to see her. Once the elevator reaches the top floor, it opens and the thugs immediately fall down from being shot by Okjo. It turns out they had been shot by Okjo while in the elevator. Okjo searches the room on the floor and sees a group of scientists in a plant house. The leader's second-in-command is also in the room, so Okjo confidently walks into the middle of the plant house and hits her gun on a metal to get everyone's attention. When they're all looking at her, she asks if they had seen the young schoolgirl. The second-in-command scoffs and watches as she threatens to let them live if they tell her the location of the young girl. The leader suddenly comes out from a room and asks if she was the one who dealt with Choi. He is shocked to see her because Choi had lied about killing and burying her in the mountains. Nevertheless, he invites her to have a sit with him in order to have a talk. He pours a drink for himself and tells her that they can work together since he doesn't hold any personal grudges against her. As he continues to talk, a bullet suddenly pierces into his head, making him fall head flat on his table. It turns out that Okjo had shot him in the head. Now that he's dead, she points the gun at everyone and asks for the whereabouts of the young girl. When no one responds, she points at the second-in-command and pulls the trigger to kill him. But there are no more bullets in the gun. Once everyone notices that she doesn't have a bullet, they run to her and try to fight her, but she immediately pulls out another gun from her pockets and begins to shoot and fight the men. She shoots and kills tons of scientists who try to come at her. They swarm up on her, so she falls down and the gun also falls off her hands. She begins to fight them with her fist, but they end up knocking her down tons of times. In one of the falls, she sees her gun under a table and picks it up, so she uses it to shoot at the men. But the bullet in the gun also finishes, so she inserts more bullets and continues to fight the men. The second-in-command approaches to fight her, but she shoots him on his leg and pins him down to a table. Then she threatens to kill him if he doesn't reveal the whereabouts of the young girl. The man insists on not telling her, so she packs broken glasses and forces him to swallow it. Then she hits him on the mouth several times, making him throw up the glasses. That night, as the pharmacist drives into the stable, Okjo approaches him and sees the body of the young girl behind him. She goes to take a closer look and finds out that the girl had been tortured brutally. As the pharmacist secretly pulls out a dagger, Okjo notices and raises her gun to shoot him, but Choi suddenly shoots her in the arm from afar. The pharmacist is relieved and walks up to Choi to praise his shooting skills. Then he orders Choi to transfer the 100 million after he takes care of Okju's body. But as he turns his back, Choi shoots and kills him from behind. Then Choi walks up to Okju and raises his gun to shoot her, but the young girl stops him by firing a gun around him. Her shooting skills were poor, so she couldn't aim perfectly at him. Once her bullet finishes, Choi decides to shoot her, but Okju fires him a bullet with the shotgun that the old man had tried to convince her to buy. Choi tries to stand on his feet, but she shoots him again. Afterward, she goes to the beach with a young girl and pulls out Choi from the Lamborghini's boot. He is still injured from the bullet wounds, so Okju pulls out the gas explosive she had bought from the old couple. Choi tries to convince her to stop and even claims that she's overreacting. He also yells that he doesn't even know her and wonders why she would go this far to kill him. So she reveals that her friend's name is Ballerina. As she turns on the gas explosive, he begins to beg and apologize. He even promises to repent and face legal punishment. But when he sees her ready to burn him, he yells that he hasn't done anything worthy to receive the death punishment. This makes Okju angry, so she hits his mouth with the gas tanker. But instead of begging for mercy, he begins to body shame her friend and even laughs about the things he did to Ballerina. Then he threatens to deal with Ballerina in hellfire once he dies. Hearing this, Okju begins to cry and promises to also deal with him in hell. Then she turns on the gas explosive and burns him until he dies. After killing him, she begins to cry and remember the happy moments she had spent with her best friend on the beach. Now in the present, she goes to Choi's house and opens his wardrobe in order to remove all the flash drives that contain explicit videos of women. She also finds a diary that contains the days that he delivers drugs to people. Afterward, she drives her motorbike into the sunset with a satisfied expression.